we were at let's see, numbers, I think. No, that's not true. We are at escape characters. Okay, so escape characters are a little different. Sorry, I'm just scrolling into the content of today. Escape characters are a little different in the sense that what an escape character essentially is. It's a character. It's a special character that allows certain formattings in the string. And in Python, this character, well, this special character is the backslash. So pay attention to that character. It's not the one right next on the bottom row. It's the one right next to the brackets. You see that it's pointing from left to right. If you use the one that's pointing from left to right, that one wouldn't work. So there are a few most commonly used escape characters. That includes /n, which returns a new line, /t, which adds 4 spaces, or as you might know, which is a tab. There are also just the backslash itself. This, by using it itself, or by using it by itself, would result in a conversion of whatever special character follows into a normal character. So that basically means because normally a backslash would mean something special, as it's a special character in Python. However, if you put 2 slashes together, then it's going to print out the backslash itself. This also applies to the quotation marks, double quotation mark or single quotation marks. They can also be printed. And this is very useful in certain cases. For example, here. Well, I guess this is this. I'll put it here. So this is a demonstration of each use case and of each of these symbols. \t, as you can see, is printing out certain spaces. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this. If you just do print with empty parentheses, it's going to print out a new line by default. So after that, if you do over here, I am using this \n, which to remind you again, that is to print out a new line, basically. So we're going to print out Python, a new line, C, a new line, then Java, so as you can see, which corresponds to this part. Then we have the link. Then we have this part.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I came in late, so are you sharing screen or something?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I did not actually. I thought I did, but I didn't. Okay, let me rewind it a little. Just move the control somewhere else. So as I was saying, we are at escape characters. Well, we left off at string concatenation, and we didn't go into escape characters. So what I was trying to say when I was in screen sharing is that a special escape characters are a special character that formats the string in a certain way. So in Python, the character is the backslash. That is the character above the enter key, right next to the brackets, the square brackets and the curly brackets. And a few most commonly used combinations are \n, which creates a new line, \t, which outputs white spaces, or just one tab for spaces, or it can be used with a combination of other special characters like \ itself, quotation marks. So in this case, when you're printing, it's only going to print out one of the slashes, or it's going to print out the quotation mark or the double quotation mark or single quotation mark. So now moving in, now looking at the code, right here, I'm doing a few demonstrations of how you can use those. These are only for the three over here, two over here I mentioned. I'm going to show you these later. So for first, backslash t is, remember, it's 4 spaces. So over here we have 4 spaces in front of Python. The second one is that Python, C, Java with a new line in between of them. So as you can see here, I'm using a backslash n to create a new line, so I don't have to do multiple print statements. So over here, as you can see, it corresponds to these 3 outputs. And I also mentioned earlier that print without any content inside the parentheses are a representation. R just means that it's going to print out a new line without any content in it. So which are these 2 empty lines represented in the output. Over here, lastly, I had link a slash n slash t over here, backslash n backslash t. I just want to demonstrate that they can be used they can be used together, and they can be chained infinitely. Okay, to show the other 2 examples of when we might use this is, for example, if you want to print out a file directory of like where your files are, you would, I'm very familiar with Windows, so I'm going to use Windows as an example. Users, even downloads. So let's say I want to point to this folder. Well, if I want to tell, like maybe tell the user where these items are stored, I can do something like print image is stored at, maybe something like this, I don't know. And you can see as over here, backslash are used, although they are technically a special character. By using 2 of them like together, I basically makes the second one a normal character. This, it can also be useful if you are, okay, going back to quotation mark ideas. If there are cases that you can't avoid using single quotation marks, or like using the alternate indicator of a string, maybe in cases like she said, I don't know. Give me one extra. So maybe it's something like this where you can't avoid using only one kind of quotation mark. In this case, it would require you to use backslash in order to print it out properly. Or else, if we don't, it would be a syntax error. Same thing over here. Same case. If we switch these to single quotation marks, then this apostrophe is gonna make everything, make the string not parsable, or Python wouldn't understand it. Therefore, using the backslash, we can make that working as well. Same idea. That's about it for escape characters. Although people might say that escape characters are really useless and you could have just, like, especially slash n slash t, you could have just put that yourself, like maybe make multiple print statements, or just adding the spaces yourself. But sometimes these are very convenient if you want to write a very long string, and that it's like a template that you store and you just use it multiple times with little alternations done through variables, such as maybe I want to have, maybe I have a message that is like, hello, hello, greetings. If you want to print this multiple times, rather than storing these 2 in different as different variables and printing them individually, you could just do one print, and you let's say maybe another part of the code also needs this. So like part one of code. Maybe we have another part of the code. And then we have another print message. Instead of this would make the code looks much more neater just because you only have one print statement and one variable being used rather than if we don't use the backslash t, we would do something like message 2 equals greetings. And then I have to print out message and message 2 every single time I want to use it. This makes the code very makes the code less pretty, and just not it's not the best practice. Okay. And after escape characters, let's talk a little more. Let's now talk about extra spaces. So take a look at this. Is there a difference between Python and Python? Although it might not look, although it might look the same as for a human, however, it's completely different for computers because there's an extra space behind the second Python. It's not noticeable at all for human. However, it's two completely different streams for coding and these Python, for any other languages, basically. So let's say, let me construct a string, I guess. If I have a message with extra spaces in the front, hello, extra spaces in the back. Okay. And I just want the thing to print out hello without any of these spaces. There are, in order to do that, sometimes we need to use something called strip. So there are three methods for removing spaces. The first one is dot strip, which is I'd say most commonly used because it simply removes the string and the spaces in the front and in the back. I'm just clicking an example actually. So right here we have these quotation marks surrounding this best language.r strip. Let me do strip. Is just to use to show the use show it for to show you. It's easier to show you that there are no spaces between them, as you can see here. However, if I simply do print out the language itself, as you can see, there are extra spaces leading and after and trailing the actual content I want to print out. So again, dot strip is removing the front and the spaces in front of and after the actual text. There's also something called L strip, which is removing the spaces on the left of the actual text. So if I print this out, sorry, mistyped. If I print this out, you would see that although that there are still spaces on the back, the spaces in the front are now gone. So similarly, if we do .r strip, that's when we are removing the spaces on the right. So if I run this, you would see that the space, although that spaces in the front are still there, the spaces on the back are now removed. So strip, think about strip as the stripping the left and stripping right. So it's sort of like it's sort of a basically doing both steps with one command function, I guess. However, this would not affect any spaces in the middle of the text. So let's say Python is wonderful. The spaces in the sentence is still going to be fine. It's going to these three methods are not gonna are not gonna remove spaces in the middle of a sentence. It's only gonna remove the ones in front or in the back or both, depending on which one you use. So that's it for remove extra spaces. That's they aren't very complicated. It's this one right now is an introduction to strings, so I won't go too much in depth to everything you could do with it. Of course, I'll start mentioning. I'll gradually adding more content of each, like what you could do for each data type. Remember, data type, as we talked about in last class, is just a fancy way of saying what kind of data is stored in the variable. So string basically stores characters, or just like alphabets, numbers, zeros, or like symbols and stuff. So now we are done with the actual content. I'm gonna go over a little bit about the possible errors that you might encounter or see when you're writing something involving strings. So just to remind you again, you can't use a single quotation mark when your string is surrounded by single quotation marks, or double quotation marks when you are surrounded by double quotation marks. This is very important because Python would not understand how to interpret this string because it doesn't know when it starts and when it stops. So there are two possible solutions to this. One, as I said, is to just use the backslash to avoid this by doing backslash quotation mark or backslash double quotation marks. Or you can do the alternative version, which is not always going to be working because sometimes you will be using both. However, if your sentence only uses one kind of quotation mark, just surround your string with another type and you will be fine. Just to show that how these would work. Not gonna do too much. Okay, so as you can see here, these two are printed without any issues. Similarly, if you do these, it's gonna be the same thing. I'll just do one of them since they're basically the same thing. As you can see, it's printed fine without any errors occurring. However, if you try to do something like this, where you're trying to print the same thing, well, trying to print a double quotation mark with surrounded by double quotation marks, it's gonna say print error. It's gonna give an error, a syntax error, especially while scanning strings. There is an error of some sort occurring. So that's when you know that, oh, I must have missed the pairing and stuff. Okay, that's about it for strings. Now let's, I guess take a, never mind, actually, I'll get started on numbers and then we'll take a break a little later. Okay. So for numbers, there are basically two major types of numbers. One of them would be integers. So like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, -1, -6, -20, stuff like that. And there are floats or decimals. So basically 1.1, -2.2, -100.0, positive 1,000.0001 actually. I don't know why. So these are stored differently in Python actually. So let's go over integers first, or like 0, 1, 2s first. So for integers, we can use plus sign, minus sign, multiply sign, or divide sign, or divide to do mathematical operations, just like how we would do in normally in math. So I guess a quick example would be, I didn't attach a link to it, but that's fine. Okay, just look at an example of this. So you can see running them would result in whatever you would expect to do normal math operations. So 2 plus 3, 5, minus 2 minus 3, -1, blah, blah, blah. So that's very much the same as what you would do in middle school, elementary school. I don't know. However, there is a little something special about programming is that you can do integer division. Integer division is basically like it's basically when you are taking the whole the integer part of the solution. So let's take 5 divided by 2, for example. This would output, I'm gonna make this a little larger just for people, for easier people to see it better. If I print 5 divided by 2, then it's gonna give you 2.5 as one expect, because 2 times 2.5 is 5. However, if I do 5 integer division 2, then I would guess 2 instead of 2.5. This is because I'm only taking the integer part of the actual solution. So I'm counting how many 2's are in 5, are in a 5. And so this way it's gonna ignore the whatever decimal places they are. So just to do another example, if I do 10 divided by 3, this is gonna be about 3 because you can only fit 3 3's in a 10. I think that's simple enough. So I'm not gonna continue too much on it. Another thing to remember is that multiply sign indicates a exponential, not a square. This is a typo. So if you do something like 2 to the power of 3, sorry, I forgot to mention that a star star b is the same as a to the b power, a power of b. So this basically indicates 2 to the power of 3. So it's going to be 2 times 3, 2 times 2 times 2, which would give you 8. Same thing here. Another example, 10 to the 2, 10 to the 4, I guess. So it would be 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, which is going to give you 10,000. So that's about it. Same thing. I'll talk about that, I guess. So something you could also do is parentheses. This is not the best example, I guess. You can use parentheses to change the order of operations. So just like how you would normally do in the math. So this is very much different from this, because the above is going to do 3 plus 2 first and then divided by 2. The bottom is going to do 2 divided by 2 first and then do 3 plus this answer, this number. So it's the same thing, just parentheses is going to change the order of operation, just like how standard math would be. Okay, enough about integers. Now let's talk about floats. So float is, to remind you again, they are decimals. So the same rules from integer applies to float as well. So the plus, minus, multiply, divide, in parentheses, stuff like that still applies to float. However, there's one thing you should note, that addition of a float or decimals are not 100% accurate. 100%, like it's not always accurate because of how the computer is designed. So there's, for all the languages, it's the same. There might be workarounds implemented in the language. However, the actual numbers are always gonna be the same thing. So if you want to try this on your own computer, so open Python, just do 0 plus 2 plus 0.2 plus 0.1. It's simple enough, right? 0.3. However, Python is going to output this 0.30000 all the way, and then 4. So this is I'm not gonna go in depth of how and why this is, but just note that because of that, because of restraints of the computer, things are be careful when doing floats. Sometimes you might not want to have a very precise number or like a very long decimal. Well, maybe not have a lot of decimal places, just because that the further you get and the more precise number is, the larger the error would be. Unfortunately, this is just something you have to work with, because there's you can implement workarounds yourself or use existing workarounds like round, basically, which rounds the number to certain decimal places. Again, just an example of showing things working here. So as you can see, 0 plus 0.1 plus 0.1 is 0.2. 2 times 0.1 is 0.2. However, 0.2 plus 0.1 is 0.300004. And 3 times 0.1 is apparently also 0.300004. So be careful when doing these operations with float, because they might not work as you wish. Okay. Also, for the ones who might have joined late, I'm gonna send this. I'm gonna send the course material, well, just like this website, to into the chat, so you can follow along if you want to. All right. Now we're back to the section of syntax errors. So I really value these sections, just because like these are mistakes that I know I always make and I know that everyone else makes. So if you pay attention to these, you are going to have much your code's gonna be much less painful to debug, because usually they won't like errors that are somehow hard to find or always happens won't happen to you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about data type again. So you can only add data types of this data of variables of the same type together. So like you can add strings and strings together, numbers and numbers together. However, you cannot add strings and numbers together. This would always result in a type error saying that string cannot be added to an int or int cannot be added to a string. So let's take a look at the sample. If I want to simply print out wish someone happy birthday, I can't do this right now, because as you can see here, again, remember how the traceback, what traceback is, and how you can understand this. So again, traceback is the error message that Python outputs to help you debug. And first it mentions what file it is, which line it is, and then it tells you like the line, like it shows you which line is the potential error, and then it tells you what kind of error it is and the reason behind it, and perhaps a solution. That doesn't always happen, because sometimes Python cannot understand it. However, only over here. So over here, this message says can only concatenate string, not int to string. So what this means is that you can only add string with string, and you cannot add string with numbers. So there's a very simple workaround to this, that is doing surrounding age with string parentheses. This converts age, like the number integer age, into a string that contains the characters 2 and 3 instead of number 23. So right now, if we run this, it's okay. Let me add a space. Okay, sorry. If you do this, it's gonna be happy 23rd birthday without giving an error, because although that prints age and age string, although they look 100% identical, they are very much different and they should be treated differently. Another trick that you could do to check what kind of data type it is doing the type age, like type parentheses. So anything you could put a variable inside and print this out to know that to know basically what kind of variable, what kind of data type this is. So over here you see, oh, it's a cost int. So you know that it's an integer. However, if you do type, let's say age string equals string age, you do type age string, it's going to say class string, because now this is converted to a string through this function called str parentheses. So that's how you would, it's the same thing applies to float. So if you want to do score equals, let's say there's a test. So score is 99.95. I don't know, maybe you got a really good score over here. If you want to print score percent, maybe some simple sentence like I want to do, my ultimate goal is you scored 99.95%. Maybe this is the string I want to print out. However, that is not going to happen when you just run it like this. Just remember that float cannot be added to a string. So the same thing applies here. If I want to do it to float, you could just put a string around it, and then you see it's printed out normally without an error. Just to show you the type name of float again, score. You see that it's saying it prints out the type of the variable that score is, which is a float. So that's that. Yeah. Over here I also implemented the two ways of fixing the code. Well, no, sorry. I also left the error message and the way to fix it over here, just so when you are looking back at it, you're able to basically know. All right, that's okay. I'm going through these really quickly. So let's take a break. Let's take a break here for about until 50, let's say, whatever time zone you are in, about a minute break until whatever time 50 it is. So I'll be here available to answer any questions. If I'm going too fast, please let me know. If I'm going too slow, please let me know as well. I'll speed up. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask right now, either in chat or speak out loud. If not, go take a rest for another like 7 minutes actually.
Hello, Cloud.
Okay. If you're around, please come back. We'll be starting very soon. I'm gonna wait like maybe 20 more seconds to for people to come back and get seated again. And after that, I'm gonna start on the next kind of topic. Okay, now let's get back to where we were. So 10 minutes ago-ish, we talked about 5 minutes, 10 minutes ago, we talked about, we went over a lot of stuff is from the from finishing up the strings and manipulations with string variables to the two kind of numbers that we will encounter in Python, which are, to mind you again, integers and floats, which are basically decimals. And there are various operations you can do with numbers. And I also introduced you to the possible error that might occur when using numbers and trying to output them. Okay, so that out of the way, let's take a look at comments. So comments are very, very important. They are no less important than the actual code. So for those who aren't really familiar with comments, comments are basically something that it's like a sticky note to put into the code. It doesn't do anything, but it tells whoever reads the code what the code is about or what it does. So to give an example of actually, I'm going to talk about how to comment first. So there are two ways of doing comments. One of them is inline commenting, which is basically using the hashtag. This allows for one line of comments, like as shown here. You can either put it like after a piece of code, or you could put it in a new line. There's another way of commenting that is multi-line comments. So for that, you can write however many lines of code comments you want, and all you have to do is surround the comments with three quotation marks. They can either be single quotation marks or double quotation marks. Just make sure that they match. So no mismatching of quotation marks for commenting. This is the same rule applies to string, by the way. So this is a sample, or just many ways you can write comments, I guess. So I cleared my replit. That's fine. We don't need that anyways right now because comments aren't really being executed anyways. So now, although now you know how to comment, but there might also be the question of what to comment and why would you even bother commenting your code. So this is a very comments, as I said 2 minutes ago, is a very important part of your code, especially when it gets super long and it gets very complicated. So I can show you an example later on of a decent, good code, good commenting that I have done. So, but going back to why we need to comment at all. So first, we need to tell the reason why we comment is so that whoever reads the code knows what we are doing in the code and they understand the what each step does and how it leads to the final result. So that keeping that in mind, it's easy to know what we need to comment. So first, we need to tell the reader what the purpose of this code is. So usually that would be like in the first few lines, you would tell who you are, when you wrote this, what is it about, and what it does. Like what it as in the code. So like what the code does and how the code does it. And then you're gonna go into more specific details for each lines, or not each lines, but like each block, each chunk of code that does one thing. So then at there, you would tell the reader what the code does, how it works, and you're also going to tell tell the reader what the inputs and outputs of your program is, so they can better like track and use whatever you wrote. So before I show you an example, this is just showing you that comments are never being executed. They aren't being interpreted by the Python interpreter. So whatever placed after it is going to be ignored and only the actual code is going to be ran. So I'd like to show you an example of code that actually example of function commenting that is very important. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention about commenting is that sometimes it's very easy to use comments for doing temporary debugging and checking. So this something maybe something over here, this isn't exactly the best example because it's not a full program. However, you can still see here that I am, and these are like these are variables I defined with certain use cases. So over here, these are when I was testing. This is a use when I was testing the code to see if they're working or not. And I don't really want to delete the code, but I don't really want to delete it because sometimes I would forget what I've done, and it's hard to sort of see them. So instead, I would just comment them out. So I know what I wrote, and I know what I'm like sort of changing, basically. Example I'd like to show of really good commenting is, unfortunately, in another coding language, but it's the same idea applies, and it's really, really helpful, I think, to see that, because this actually I wrote for a, sorry, just trying to find the folder. There you go. So this is something I wrote for another, for something else. So this is when commenting really comes in handy. So I'm gonna unwrap this. As you can see, every single function I wrote some amount of comments. I would prefer to write more. This is about where you want it to be. You can write more, of course, if you want to, but also don't be aware that you don't overflood the user with too much content. So this is one reason, and this again is one reason why we use comments. It's very efficient for testing out certain portions of the code. You can comment and uncomment it out as you wish, and you don't actually have to like retype everything, because these lines are very long and very annoying to type. And going back there, these are the inline comments I was talking about that tells you what each chunk of the code does. So like over here, remove the OK and brackets from start of the string. So oh, okay, so sub str is going to be something that that basically changes how the string is. So stuff like these are, sorry, I'm spending a long time on this just because I want to emphasize how this comment and writing comments is a really, really good habit. It's something that took me many years to develop because I didn't pay attention at first, and I definitely regret it. I'm still working on it. As you can see, sometimes I forget to comment stuff. Maybe stuff like here could use a little more comments. Functions like stuff like these, I don't have any comments. So these, so as you can see, I'm still working on it. But but just so I know how painful it is to go back to code from 3 years ago, let's say, and you like maybe it's a piece of code you are very proud of. It uses very complicated algorithms. It has very smart ways of manipulating the data that it makes the code so efficient and so short and so good and so good. But if you don't write it in comments and then take a look at it, not even 3 years, heck, just even after after 3 weeks, a month, you go back to it and you really don't understand what you have done. Why did I use this? Why did I write this line? Why, like, how does it work? I don't understand. So that's just a very maybe over exaggerated take on comments. As you can see, this is another, this is written in Python, and this is another, I guess, another example of comments that I've done here. It's a lot more comments, and this I would say are too much just because how messy it looks now, but just another example, I guess. Okay, now back to the actual content. That's it for unit 1. So the homework for unit 1, there is only like one homework, gonna be honest. There isn't that much. That is to check out Zen of Python. this is also something I'm really focusing on, like developing habits, as you can probably see from the common errors I put in, and I spend like a lot of I spend a lot of time on, and also the kind of common styles. So some stuff like these, it's it's very easy to develop early on when you're just starting to code, and it would benefit you in the long run. So you don't have to force yourself to learn it, force yourself into the good habit once you like after maybe 3 years of coding or 5 years of coding. So just to show you how to get that Zen on Python, that simply go to your command line or command prompt, command center, depending on which platform, which window, which operating system you're using. Type Python, hit return, and you'll see something like this: some sort of Python, some sort of number, blah blah blah. Don't worry about it. Type import this and enter again, and it's gonna print out these like 10, 20 lines of sentences that tells you how you should basically write your code. I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna go into this just because there's a lot, and there's a lot I can talk about. But I would like to spend this on something else. So that out of the way, we can. Yeah. So just to show you again, it's import this and press it. Oh, okay. Oh, it only works. It only does one import. So Python enter, and then just do import this, and then read through this. Maybe think about why they would matter and why they would be kind of not necessary, but why would they would benefit others and you at the same time. Okay, this would be it from unit 1. Let's take another look at it. First, we went over what variables are, the naming. Remember that like numbers, letters, underscore can only be only those can be used in the name. Then we went over like possible errors that you might see with names. That is mistype or putting numbers at the beginning. Also, then we looked over strings, how to change the case of the letters. We can either capitalize the first letter of the word, of every word, or we can make everything uppercase or make everything lowercase. We also looked over how to add strings. Remember, just the plus sign. Escape characters, remember it's the backslash that somehow that adds certain formatting to the string. Also, how to remove extra spaces. That's the dot strip or dot l strip, dot r strip. Then we looked at possible syntax error with strings. Remember, that's just when you are using quotation marks in quotation mark, like in quotation marks that surrounds the string, that Python might get confused and doesn't know how to interpret it. Now let's look at numbers. Then we looked at numbers which are integers and floats. Remember, integers are 0, 1, 2, 3, while floats are -1.1, -0.0, -0.4, 4.7, stuff like that. We went over integer division. Remember, that's just taking the whole number, integer part of the solution. We went over the basic operations. Remember, that's just the same thing as normal math. We went over how to avoid syntax error with a string, with conversion of integer or float into string, so you can add it to another sentence. We then went over how to do comments, why they are why do we do comment, why we write comments, and how we write comments. Then we took a look at like some examples, I guess. So that will be it for unit 1. Remember, if you want to go back to any of these, the recordings, I will, if not already posted, I will post them into, I'll send an email to you guys of where the recordings are going to be. They're going to be on YouTube, or they and the website, like the course material itself is going to be on this website, and I'll send it into the chat one more time, just in case anyone's still, needed. On this, you can find every single bit of information we're going to cover. This Right now, it's only updated to half of Unit 2. I finished Unit 2 earlier today, but I didn't post it yet, so that will be done probably sometime after this class. However, no, sorry, Unit 3. Unit 2 is what we're going to get into next. Okay, let's spend some time on another data type. Sorry, I know this core. I know so far we have been doing a lot of like variables, data types, those boring stuff. However, without these, we can't really start writing any code because we don't have any of those building blocks or foundations laid out. So bear with me. We will get into more operation stuff in data list manipulation, if conditions, and stuff like that. Okay, so let's start with list. A list, as anyone might think, is basically a long, it's a long list of stuff or things. So in coding, like you might get a shopping list, you might get a list of, you might get a bucket list, you might get like a list of your favorite food, stuff like that. Basically, it's a collection of items. So in Python, a list is a series of elements arranged in a certain order. That order is defined by user. So whatever you put in first, it's going to be like first. Whatever you put in next, last, it's going to be the last in the list. So they can basically store an infinite number of data. There is a cap, but that cap is very trivial for coding for coding in general, just because how large the number is and how you would never reach that basically. So we can ignore that. For those who are curious, I can tell you the numbers. It's 2 to the 16th minus 1. So 65535. That would be the max number of items you can store, but that's it doesn't matter. Okay. So now so continue. Data stored in a list can be of different data types. So you can store an int with a string, with a float, with another list, and that list can have another list inside of the list. So stuff like that. It gets complicated really quickly, especially when you have lists inside a list. We won't get too much into that now, but when we are writing actual code, that might be something we need to take a look at. So a list, just like strings, have a certain way of representation in Python. In that case, in the case of list, is square brackets and a comma. So to show you an example, how you might create a list. Sorry, I'm going to open bracket again. I accidentally closed it when we're during break. Never back up. Okay, we're back again. Okay, taking a look at this. So as you can see here, this is a list. Seasons is a list. So you know it's a list because that they are surrounded by square brackets and there are commas separating each of the elements in the list. So this is how a list might look like. There's also maybe a list that looks like something like this. So a list, seasons, 1, 3, 2.2. Although you probably won't see something like this, but this is also a list because although they are of different data types like numbers, ints, floats, string, and even another list, they can still, it still runs properly because Python doesn't care of what kind of variable you store inside. So that out of the way, we can just print this out actually. For every single variable, for every single data type, you can just directly print it out, although it might not look the prettiest, but it tells you the basic information. So as you can see, I just printed out the seasons, which is this list to remind you. And as you can see here, it basically prints out how the list looks like in the code. So you can still see the square brackets. However, for default, Python uses a single quotation mark. So those are replaced with this. Well, the double quotation mark are being replaced by the single quotation mark. That's very trivial. They are, as to remind you, they literally do the same thing. So it doesn't matter. However, if you add a single quotation mark in the code itself, then it's gonna be changed. Python is very smart and it knows how sometimes how to handle certain information. So like that, it just changes it changes automatically without you even needing to specify anything. Like over here, Python is finding out of trip. As you can see, Python tries to avoid this backslash with all costs. So, however, when it can, this is the last resort for all kinds in general. So backslash is very annoying to read. So sometimes it's always used as the last resort, and we would always try other methods before we have to use this. That's just to remind you the idea of backslash again. And we can also print this list out. As you can see, it's getting covered. Okay, there you go. As you can see, this is the seasons list that's stored inside one of the elements of another list. It might be confusing, so if you don't understand this, don't worry about it. Just you can ignore it for now because we'll go more into in depth of that later on. So as you can see, this is one element. There's 1, 3, 2.2, hello, just like how it's stored over here. Okay, now we have a little bit more time, so I'm gonna go over maybe one more thing on list, which is accessing elements in the list. So it might be great that you can print the entire list out, but sometimes you just want one element of the list. Sometimes I don't want to print out all seasons. Maybe I want to print out one of those seasons. Maybe I want to print out the season I'm in right now. How would I do that? As mentioned before, lists are stored in a certain order. So if there's an order, there is a way for you to access the element. So to access an element, you need the location of the element, or in coding terms, the index. So index is just a fancy way of saying where it is. So index, by accessing the element, just means put the index of the element you want to take out in the square brackets after the variable name. So for example, over here, since seasons is a list, I can put a square bracket after it. And then I could put in any number between 0 and 3. Over here, I'm going to take out 1. So let's print this out. Summer. Okay. So now I'm only printing out one of the elements. But why does it start? Why did I specified 1? I want the first item in the list. However, it's giving me the second, although it says 1. Should Spring be 1? So that's the something special, something unique to each language. Index in Python starts at 0. So it counts from 0 to 3. 0. Well, okay, I'm not gonna attempt to write it. Spring is 0, summer is 1, autumn is 2, and winter is 3. So although there are 4 elements, the maximum index is 3 and the minimum index is 0, and it covers 4 elements. This, however, is not universal actually. I believe that JavaScript starts, so JavaScript isn't a language, by the way, starts at index 1 instead of index 0. So that it might be confusing, but then a language called Java, it also starts at 0, same thing as C, C sharp, C++, which are all different languages. So I give an example here. So the index of like third element in the list is 2 instead of 3. And yeah, and then each element should be treated like an individual variable. So they should be, so like you can do whatever you want with. So basically think of seasons in seasons one as a variable by itself. Maybe it's called like maybe it's called like uh, season equals season one. And then you can do whatever you want with seasons. Treat it as a string because it is a string. Remember, if I type, if I check the type of it, it's just simply string. So this is very important because all actions, well, each element is an individual variable. Therefore, all actions of variables can be performed on an element in the list. It's not, it cannot be performed on a list. It can be performed on an element in the list. So this means that anything like maybe anything you could do with anything here, you can just simply replace it. And then it's also still going to print out string. So you know that this is a type string. Like we could do like dot title. If I can spell title correctly, that would be great. Dot title, it's going to print out. If I do title, it's going to print out summer with cap. If I do upper, it's going to work the same thing. It's literally it's just a string. Okay, to not, okay, let's take a look at this season index. So over here, it's another demonstration of how you can use, why is this giving me an error? Okay. Oh, because I used the wrong symbol here. That's, okay. So over here, I'm printing out spring, and it is now summer. Just so you can see, I'm treating this just like another string. I'm making it titled, and then I'm just adding it to another part of the sentence. Okay. I'll finish this and won't continue because time's almost up. Index can also be negative. This might seem confusing, but it's trust me, it's not. So think about counting, think about negative index as counting backwards. So over here we had season index 0, which is spring. But if we have season -1, then we're counting backwards. So this from counting, instead of counting left to right, we're counting from right to left. So this is index 0. This will be index -1. This will be index -2. This will be index -3. This will be -4, etc. So we're doing so basically doing -1 is going to print out winner. Doing -2, it's going to print out autumn. Let's see that in action. As you can see here, -1 printed out winter, -2 printed out autumn. So this is very useful, especially when you don't know the length of the list. Maybe it has X number of items in the list. You don't know how many there is, but you want the last element. How would you do that? The easiest way is always just do -1 because this way it's guaranteed that the last element is going to be printed out. So, and I guess to show you again, even if we have many summers, okay, because who doesn't love summer? Come on. It's still going to print out winter and autumn because it doesn't go from left to right. Instead, it goes the other direction. However, if we want to do print out season 3 and print out season 2, so normally with this number of summer, with this, by running it, it's going to print out winter and autumn. However, if I have I change the length of the list at all. It's now going to print out 2 summers instead of the autumn and winter that we are looking for. So that's just another very useful use case of this. It's not very niche, but it's very nice, definitely. Um, so I don't think I'll go into more details because we are almost running out of time. However, I'm not gonna go into too much details. So okay, wrap up for today. So first we went to remind you again, first we went over unit 1, whatever's remaining. We looked at everything of string, everything of numbers, the modifications, blah blah blah. Then looked at comments, and then I assigned a very, very simple homework that shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes. It's just to read like 10 lines of sentences and think about it. After that, I we get a we got a slight peek, a sneak peek at what the list is in Python, which is, just to remind you again, it's a container, but it's basically a container of various elements. And elements are just another way of saying variables. So basically, it stores a lot of variables. And we looked at how to create a list and how to access elements from the list. Next time in class, we'll go over how to add, remove, or edit the elements. We'll look at multiple ways of doing each of these steps. We'll talk about how to order these elements, how to given how some possible errors that you might occur while doing this, and then we'll go over the homework. Then we'll do then I will assign the homework next. So without dragging this on further, I am going to call class for the day today. Yeah, we are 7 minutes ahead of schedule. Yeah, I'm not very great at keeping track of time, so you might see this sometime. You might see this maybe very often, but I'm gonna try to make sure that we go the full length, just so that we have enough time at the end of the class. Oh, we have enough time at the end of the course to work on perhaps one project. That'll be the best. So as per usual, I'll be here for maybe 20 minutes or until everybody is done and doesn't need any help. So now you're free to go. Have a great day. If you have any questions, please stay and ask me now. All right. And I'll see you next time. Well, tomorrow actually. Hey Keith, sorry, I wasn't checking the screen at the participants. Do you have any questions? Oh, okay. This way, goodbye, I guess. That's okay. I'll stop sharing. If anyone needs help, I'll be here. If not, yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, I'll probably close the room in 5 minutes if nobody else have any questions.